Okay, so in the last tutorial, we created some text and we animated the position and scale. And we also animated the color over time. And in this tutorial, I am going to show you how to take that text and align it to a path and to animate text along that path. I'm going to go down here to my layers menu, and I'm just going to turn the visibility off of that text for a second. And I'm going to talk about paths in After Effects. So if you've used any other vector-based program before, you should be familiar with what paths are. Paths are basically lines that connect points, and those create shapes. And in After Effects, we use paths to um, really basically do all of our animations, and also so things animate along paths as well as paths being shapes. So we have shapes that are paths that are text are vector paths. We can use the pen tool to create shapes, and we can also use um, the shape tools up here in the toolbar. So we have rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and star. So you can add those, and you can manipulate those after you add them. So I'm going to use the pen tool and create just a wavy path here that I would like my text to follow along. So I'm just going to click and create a point, and then I'm going to click and create another point. And then as I click, I'm going to hold down my mouse key and drag, and that's going to give me this Bezier curve, which allows me to create a path that has soft edges. Otherwise, it would look like this. So it would have hard points on there, or hard shifts. And so I'm just going to do that for some more and create kind of like a little wavy path here. And we can go back and we can edit these just like you can do in other vector-based graphics programs. So now I have that path. And one thing to highlight here is that when I created that path, it didn't create a new layer. And that's because I was active on the text layer that I created earlier, where I typed out under the weather. And if I was not active on that and created a path, it would create its own new shape layer. And so that's kind of important because when we want to connect the text to the path, we want them to be on the same layer. And there's ways to connect them without them being on the same layer. But for our purposes, I think it's easier to work this way. So I'm just going to delete that one. And so I'm going to find the path that I just made under my text layer. And so let's see what I have here. I have some animators. Okay, so under my, oh yeah, it's under, okay. So the path that I just created actually comes up under masks. So a lot of times we use paths to create masks in After Effects. And so I'm not sure why they always call them masks, because they're not always used as masks, but nonetheless, we can find that path under mask. And so that's mask number one. If we had other paths on this layer, they would be mask number two, and so on and so forth. So if we had, color, add a color here. We can change some of the options for that, but we're not using this path as a line. And so we're using this path as a path to link our text to. And so, so we don't need color, we don't need a stroke, we don't need a fill. We just want it to be just the lines and points. And so under path options, under our text, I'm going to click the arrow down so it can open that up options up a little bit. And then under here, I can say under path, it says none. What I want to do is actually link that text to that path. So I chose mask 1. Remember, mask 1 is our path. And now you can see that the text is on the path. It's actually linked to the path. And so there's some options we have here for this. We can reverse path, so the text is underneath rather than on top. We can make it perpendicular to the path, the text. By default, it kind of forms to the shape of the path. We can force alignment, which spreads the text out for the entire length of the path. And then we can actually change where on the path the text is by changing the margin. And another thing that you might notice here is that we also have options to animate all of these options. So if we want to have the text animate from the left side to the right side, then what we're going to do is actually animate the first margin. And I think what I'm going to do is, in the previous tutorial, I had animated, well, I guess we could just leave that. So basically in the previous tutorial, I had animated the position and scale and color. And I think actually I'm going to take that off for now. And I'm going to move this whole thing back up and scale it down a little bit. So I just want you all to be able to see what I'm doing here. So I just got rid of that animation I did before. Okay. So I'm going to animate my first margin. So I have my scrubber at the beginning of my timeline. I'm going to click my toggle animation on, and this is telling After Effects that this is where I want my text to start in the animation. And now I'm going to move my text to where I want the animation to end. And I am going to change that margin so it's all the way at the end. And you can see I have those keyframes now. And if I play that, then the text actually follows that path. And in the previous tutorial, I had changed the color of the text over time from blue to gray. And so that's why you're seeing the color shift there. Okay, so we can go back and we can edit that mask if we want to. And so if we go back to, let's see here. Well, we can edit it if we want to. I don't know. I'm like messing this up right now. But anyway, so another thing I wanted to show you is I'm going to actually get rid of that mask or path. And I'm going to add let's do a rounded rectangle. And I'm just going to create a rectangle in my composition. And so I want to show you what just happened there. So when we add shapes like this to our composition, they go in as masks. And so if I had imagery, basically when this went in here, so it created mask 1 and it was on add. We have different options for these. So If the mask is on add, then you're only going to see the content underneath it through that mask. So if I move this mask around, then I'm just enlarging it here. I can see the text underneath it. And so basically, I'm going to say that I don't want, and then you can also subtract, intersect, lighten. There's different options here. I'm going to say none. So basically, now that what this was a mask, being used as a mask, now it's just a shape and it's just a path. And so, just like we did with the other path, under my text layer, I'm going to go to path options and I'm going to choose mask one. And now you can see that my text is connected to that path. And again, I'm actually going to do a different type of animation here. Last time we just started at the beginning of the path and we ended the animation at the right side, the end of the path. And I'm going to force the alignment with the path. And so remember that spreads the text out within the path. Let me zoom in a little bit here. So you can see. So I have my text on this path. And what I want to do is have it start stretched out like this. So we're forcing alignment, so which means it's stretching the text out through the entire length of the path. And I want it to start stretched and then animate it kind of coming back together towards the end. So I have the force alignment on. I'm gonna toggle my animation of my first margin that created my keyframe. And now I'm going to go to where I want my animation to end, and I'm going to change that first margin again. And I'm bringing it all the way over here. And so now I animated being fully stretched to bringing it all back together. And now that's not obviously not perfect because we have that R on an angle there. That doesn't look that great. But that gives you an idea of some options that you can do for with your text and connecting them to paths.